Agriculture, Part 1. People living in the central and northern parts of Israel enjoyed a climate which sustained agriculture quite well. Those people planted gardens and fruit-bearing trees, especially in the northern part of the country where it rains more often. They built terraces to catch and hold the rainwater, so it did not all run off down the hillsides and become lost. In Israel and the surrounding countries of Syria and northern Mesopotamia, the farmers depended on rain to water their crops. So rain gods and storm gods such as Baal or Hadad were worshipped. In Egypt and southern Mesopotamia, farmers relied on rivers and irrigation, so river gods were very important to them. Wheat and barley were the two most important crops grown there. In order to prepare their fields for planting crops, the farmers first had to remove all of the big rocks. These rocks were piled up along the edges of their fields. Then the seed was sown. The farmer carried the seed in either a bag or a fold of his clothes. He tried to scatter the seed evenly over all the prepared ground, but this was not a precise process. After sowing the seed, the farmer would then plow the field to cover the seed. Any seed that remained on the surface would be eaten by birds or ants. Jesus told a story about a farmer who was sowing seed in his field. Though the seed was precious, some fell in places where it was not covered by soil during plowing. So most of that seed was either eaten by birds or did not grow well. Other seed fell among the thorns and weeds at the edge of the field. There, when the seeds sprouted, they were choked out by the thorns and weeds. The plow was usually made of wood. Only the tip of the plow was made of metal. The plow was pulled by either an ox or donkey. The animal was attached to the plow by a rope connecting the plow to the animal pulling it. The farmer carried a long stick with a pointed end called a goad. He used this stick to keep the animal moving forward and under control. Barley was ready to harvest earlier than the wheat. Both barley and wheat plants grow many individual grains in a head at the top of a stalk. The goal of harvesting was to make the grain usable as food. To do this, workers would go into a field of grain. There they would cut down the stalks holding up the grain. They did this with a tool which had a curved blade, and it was called a sickle. They would tie the stalks into bundles or sheaves. If any of the stalks came loose, they were left in the field for poor people and widows to gather or glean. The widow Ruth gleaned in the fields near Bethlehem, which belonged to Boaz. To separate the grain from the stalks on which it grew, the grain needed to be threshed. For a small amount of grain, a person would hold the stalks in one hand and beat the heads of grain with a stick or a special paddle made for threshing to release the grains, which then fell down. Larger amounts of grain required the use of a threshing board. The sheaves would be placed on a flat surface called a threshing floor. Then a board with small stones or metal teeth embedded in it would be dragged over the sheaves to release the grain. Threshing was usually done during the day out in the open fields, but Gideon worked at night down in a winepress so that his enemies would not know that he was threshing grain down in there. After the threshing was done, the grain had to be separated from the loose cut material, or chaff. This took place in 2 stages. First, a worker would use a wooden fork to toss the mixture up into the wind. The grain would fall to the ground close by, while the chaff, which was lighter, would be blown further away. Because all this work was done outside, small stones and dirt would get mixed in with the grain. So then, the grain had to be put into round, shallow mesh baskets and shaken or winnowed to remove the trash. Sometimes this process was repeated. Most of the flour in homes was ground by the women early in the morning. To grind grain into flour, 2 types of mills were used. The earliest type was simply 2 flat rocks being rubbed together with the grain between them. Or, the grain was put between 2 round stones, and the top stone was turned or rolled over the bottom stone, which did not move. This type of mill could be small enough for use in most homes. If the top stone was quite large, then either an animal or slaves were needed to turn it. To bake bread, the flour was mixed with water and then with oil to make dough, which was baked on a hot surface. This bread was never cut, but was broken or torn. Then, before eating, the bread was dipped into broth or flavored olive oil.